ABC Kinderteach presents A History of Me, written by Theodore, illustrated by Aaron K. Robinson. I was the only brown person in class, which means in her classroom she was the only person that was not white. Everybody else was white. So when we talked about slavery, and slavery is a terrible thing in which some people own other people, and those people have to do whatever they want, and the people can do whatever they want to them. So it's a very, very bad thing. I could feel every eye staring at me behind my back because in the past, people that were black or African American were often slaves in the United States. When the teacher talked about picking cotton and slave shacks and sisters being sold away separately, which means sometimes sisters, brothers, mothers, fathers, they were sold to different people so they didn't even get to be together even for the rest of their lives. I wanted to slide out of my seat and onto the floor and drift or slowly leave out the door. So she kind of wanted to disappear. My mother had told me before that her great great grandmother on her mother's side was born enslaved, forced to be a slave, but she died young, so we didn't know much about her. So a great great grandmother would be the person's grandmother's mother's mother. And so I should be grateful to go to school and learn. I was. I loved to learn. But, so she loved being at school. She loved learning, but I was the only brown person in class when we talked about the struggle, trying really hard to get free, for civil rights, the right to be treated like everyone else in America. And Martin Luther King Jr., there he is, and marches, and police dogs, and water cannons. And sometimes they would use like fire hoses to spray people to get them to back up and get away and stop being what they would think of as a pest, but they were just standing up for what they believed in. On the playground, some girls giggled and whispered and giggled some more and pointed at me and looked away when I looked at them. I wanted to slip off the swing and seep or slowly disappear into the ground, not making a sound. She wanted to disappear because she was the only black or African American student in her class, and so people always looked at her because when people think about civil rights and they think about slavery, they usually think about people that are black or African American. My mother had told me before that her grandmother on her mother's side was born free, but only got to go to school for a little while, till the third grade. So the mother's grandmother only got to go to school for a little while, not very long. And so I should be grateful to go to school and learn. I was. I loved to learn. I was in the third grade and I had just learned how to multiply and how to write essays, a written paper about something, and how to think for myself. But so this girl is the same age as her mother's grandmother when she had to drop out of school because they would only let her go till the third grade. I was the only person walking home from school with a violin case in my hand when that boy rode by on his brand new bike and barked or yelled at me, "If it wasn't for Lincoln, you'd still be our slaves." He's being really, really mean and nasty to her. And he's saying that it wasn't for Abraham Lincoln that she would be a slave still, because he was the president that was responsible for freeing the slaves. I wanted to sprint away after him and ask, "Is that all you see when you look at me?" And sprint just means to run fast. My mom had told me before that she grew up in the South, so now we're talking about the girl's mother, and everyone in her school was brown like me. She saw whites only everywhere, which means only white people could go in these places, and some places said black only, which only black people could go in, because they did not want the black people and the white people to be in the same restaurants and stores sometimes. She wasn't mad. That was just how it was. She wanted to be a nurse. She couldn't go to school for that, so she moved up north where she could go to school. And so I should be grateful to go to school and learn. I was. I loved to learn. I loved science. I became a doctor who writes poems and loves music, but so when this little girl grew up, she became a doctor. My daughter was the only brown person in her class when they talked about slavery and when they talked about civil rights. So now that little girl from before has grown up and she's become a mom, and so she worries about her little girl having some of the same experiences that she had when she was a little girl. I told her that I was the only brown person in my class too, and just because no one ever mentions courage, strength, intelligence, or creativity, that doesn't mean it isn't there. So when they talk about civil rights and they talk about slavery, they often talk about what happened, but they don't talk about the courage and the intelligence and all the good things that were associated with African Americans or black people. They just focus just on the what happened. So she shouldn't slide to the floor or seep into the ground. She shouldn't try to disappear, but sit up straight and fly high into the sky, because what matters more are those moments in the mirror when she asks herself, "What do I see when I look at me?" What I think that they're talking about here is that she should be proud of who she is and think about what she wants to become, and don't worry so much about everybody else. And when she does, I hope she will see that she is free to be anything she wants to be. So let her become who she wants to be.